Welcome to Roseilience, where we amplify the voices of those turning adversity into opportunity, one petal at a time. And I am Kia Arnold, your creative, storytelling, frugal fashionista host. On Roseilience, you will hear the stories of people who started with thorny situations but are working tirelessly to bloom the best possible outcomes. We highlight their journeys, grit, and the steps they take to rise above. Today, we have not one, but two guests, a powerhouse couple working in concert, Warren and Renee Cobb. Their bios and accolades are so extensive, we'd spend the entire show reading them, so I am just going to provide a brief overview. Renee Cobb is a dynamic keynote speaker, consultant, board member, and executive producer who has dedicated her life to creating spaces where artists and audiences can thrive together. As co-president of Listen Locally and president of Room 17 Productions, Renee has made her mark in both the business and nonprofit worlds through music, storytelling, and transformational conversations. She's also the host of multi-award-winning Overtones Live and Gray Matters, two shows that inspire and elevate voices across generations and genres. Warren Cobb is a singer, songwriter, and executive producer. He is the other half behind Listen Locally and Room 17 Productions. With a rich background in music performance, talent management, and radio production, he's helped create platforms like Overtones Live and Gray Matters that amplify diverse voices and local talent. Together, they both have become a cornerstone of the regional arts community with their blending of live performance, documentary storytelling, and radio with a shared commitment to authenticity, equity, and artistry. They have earned dozens of honors, including the 2025 Lexington Music Awards Lifetime Achievement Award, Media Company of the Year 3 times, and multiple national recognitions from the Gracie Awards, Josie Music Awards, and the Stevie Awards for Women in Business. Warren and Renee also have a love story that has blossomed later in life, proving that timing, like harmony, is everything. Welcome to Roseilience, Renee and Warren.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And so we always start the show with a reading of The Rose That Grew from Concrete by Tupac, but I know from previous guests, they connect Rose and Concrete with Aretha Franklin's Spanish Harlem. So either way, the show title Roseilience is a play on words like rose, like the rose that grew from concrete, and resilience, the capacity to withstand or to recover from difficulties. Did you hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete? Proving nature's law is wrong. It learned to walk without having feet. Funny it seems, but by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. Long live the rose that grew from concrete when no one else ever cared. So Warren and Renee, what was your takeaway from the poem and how does that relate to your journey?
Oh, he's pointing to me. This is what happens, Kia. We look at each other. I love that analogy because I feel like almost everything that we have worked in concert with together and also worked so hard to be together really reflects a rose that has definitely grown through a crack in the concrete. And I'm just so thankful at this point in our lives that we've been able to identify where that crack is, where it lives, and how we could blossom like through that.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Your turn.
I don't know what I can add to that, really. I mean, yeah, I think just it comes down to being at the right place at the right time and taking advantage of opportunities that you have when they present themselves, you know, and just not giving up on whatever vision you have for yourself or your life or your marriage, yes. Your relationship, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So jumping right into our interview portion, you all both attended the University of Kentucky and shared some classes together. Can you talk about your educational experience and how it has shaped who you all are today?
I will go first.
Okay.
The experience at the University of Kentucky School of Music has continued to provide experiences for me later in life that I just draw upon all of the time. And I never knew, you never really know at the time that you're kind of going through things or having these chapters in your life that, 35 and 40 years later, you're going to be right back at the place where you began, and you will know it for the first time, as T.S. Eliot once said. I use that quote a lot. But to me, it provided me with not only a wonderful husband that came much later in life, but we were friends at the University of Kentucky at the time, but also being able to reconnect with a lot of my classmates over a shared love for a professor that we had at the University of Kentucky, Dr. Sarah Holroyd. And we, much later in life, just to fast forward, we lost a couple of classmates along the way, and we did not grow up in a YouTube type of generation where all of the things that you did back then were shared like online. Mm-hmm. So we together went through a journey where we explored some of the video, some of the audio that our professor had during that time, and also learned of a very Roseilience story that she had in having a tenure challenge at the University of Kentucky in the 1960s that we never knew anything about. So this one thing of just really reconnecting through these losses of our family and our friends really led to a lot of other wonderful things, and also the formation of Room 17 Productions, which is the nonprofit that Warren and I run together. And it's based off of Room 17 in the College of Fine Arts classroom. And that's where our careers, what we call, are produced. So these are stories about people whose careers were produced in Room 17.
That is so beautiful, so beautiful. And I love how you've connected all of that together. And I wanted to ask, what does it mean to work in concert in music, business, and in marriage?
Well, I'll back up to your first question as far as my experience at UK. You don't, when you're that age, 17, 18, 19, you don't often realize the magnitude of what you're going through at the time, what you're experiencing, especially in terms of education. And UK was a really top shelf classical music school. Everything was classical, basically. Mm-hmm. When we were there, I think Vince DiMartino showed up, so he kind of opened up the jazz world. There was no guitar program. There was not even a classical guitar program at that time. I think Michael Fogler came at sometime during the time before we graduated, so that became a classical guitar program. But for me, I was coming from a position of being a rock and roller. Mm-hmm. Like, I was out playing in bars when I was 16, playing acoustic and electric guitar. And I could read vocal lines and I could read guitar parts, right? But I didn't play piano. I never touched a piano before I got to college. So that made it very difficult. That kind of put me behind the eight ball. She was a classically trained pianist who could have toured the world as a concert pianist if she wanted to, and can still read anything you put in front of her, even today. I found that extremely intimidating, and so I had to work extra hard to get over that hurdle, and become a reader, at least to get through, at least well enough to get through college, The piano part, I didn't do so well at. My piano professor made me promise never to tell anybody she graduated me because I was so bad. I didn't practice. I just played guitar, and that was my thing. And I wish, looking back now, I kind of wish I absolutely wish I had spent more time in the practice rooms working on piano, because that opens up a whole different world in terms of composing, and just it raises your level of musicianship beyond just an instrument like guitar, So, and I think the level of talent that was there, the professors, the level of musicianship that they expected out of you, is something you don't realize until many years later when you see, you go out to a venue and you watch a band or you watch a performer on stage, and you can kind of tell when they're just kind of mailing it in, when they're not invested in what they're doing, when they don't feel what they're doing, we had to sing in probably 6 or 7 foreign languages that we didn't know. We didn't know the languages, but we had to phonetically learn the words, and then we had to find out what those words meant, and we had to convey the meaning of that song in another language while we sang it, right? And I see people getting up on a stool with a guitar and singing in English, and they don't make you feel anything, right? So that's what it taught. It's one of the things it taught us was to feel what you're doing, to do the work, to learn the craft of performing, of singing, the technique involved vocally, whatever your instrument is, and try to convey something that moves people, because that's what music is. It's art, right? Mm-hmm. Just like looking at a painting, it either moves you or it doesn't. You get it or you don't. But you get something different than I do, right? Mm-hmm. Same with music, and it's very subjective, but its goal is to make you feel something, right? So that was kind of that's my little synopsis of my take on the college experience. It was a very humbling place to be, and it taught us more than we probably ever realized at the time. That has carried over through the years, really across multiple disciplines. Not just music, but business.
Medicine, lawyers. We've identified all kinds of careers that our classmates have went into that may not be music, but music was at the core of what they did in their career.
Yeah. There's a level of excellence when you're standing in a group of, say, 50 people. You have soprano, alto, tenor, bass sections, right? And you're all trying to sing as one in your section. And those sections are all trying to sing as one as a group. And you're following a conductor who's world-renowned, There's just a level of musicianship there. And boy, I don't even know what the word is. It's magic, It's just something that you very rarely will ever experience again. The likelihood of finding other musicians that are like-minded with that level of commitment and talent all brought together in one place to perform on stage in front of other people, that's just a really rare thing. So beyond that, you kind of do the best you can, whether you're by yourself or in a duo or a band or whatever it is, you try to make the best of the situation you're in, the people you're with. You have to kind of overlook some of their deficiencies, right, musically, and you have to raise them up when you can, but what was the second part of the question?
The second part was talking about what is work in concert, but I think what you were just describing sounds a lot like working in concert. So if you all want to expand on that, what does it mean in music and business and your relationship?
Yeah, well, I guess what it really comes down to is, the old kind of basic golden rule that people talk about, treat others the way you want to be treated, whether you're in a band, whether you're in an office, wherever you are. You have to be able to get along with people. You have to be a team player within a setting, but you also have to speak up when you know something someone else doesn't, and you can help them see something they can't see. You have to be able to express that in a way that's not offensive, right? Mm-hmm. But that is something they will want to take in and consider and think about and maybe go home and work on, or whatever that is, right? So same thing with business, and making money or a relationship. I mean, we have our conversational techniques, I guess, have, developed and changed, and, we've spent 10 years plus now together, so we know each other better now than we did going in. So there has to be a level of respect there that is maintained at all times. Like you can't drop that. You can't just go, oh, screw it, I don't care, I'm going to say it anyway. No, you have to, you have to guard your tongue. You have to think before you speak. You have to, because you can say something that you might get over and you might forget, but the person who's hearing it, they'll never forget it, right? They might forgive you for saying it. They might not appreciate how you're saying it, but they'll always remember it. So, you have to make that choice. Is it worth that happening? Same in business, same in, working with other people. Our whole thing with this radio show and a lot of the things we do is raising up other musicians, giving them an opportunity to be on a stage somewhere they've never been, in front of an audience they would have never met, to present their music,
Even on the radio.
Even on the radio.
Yeah.
Whether it's live or pre-recorded or whatever the case may be. Some people never, ever get on the radio on any level, right? It's, we kind of take it for granted now because we've done it so long, and in a couple of different situations, where we were involved in radio programs. But that's rarefied air, that it really is. And so somebody who's sitting at, pick a local venue, playing music, right, that writing, singing their own songs, they might be playing some covers to appease the crowd or whatever. They're not thinking about being on the radio because they don't know how. There's no path for them to do that. So we try to provide that opportunity for people,
Yeah, and you all do such an amazing job with that, and I love how the community just respects you all, the community of musicians that I see, and I love how you give so many opportunities to musicians of all backgrounds as well as all levels, people just starting out, people that have been in the business for a while, so that's really cool.
Well, thank you for saying that. We really appreciate all that you do here at Radio Lex as well in making all that happen for all the musicians who have crossed our paths.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And so is there anything else that you'd like to add about working in concert?
Yeah, I really like this phrase because to me it was the perfect blend of working, which to me reflected the business aspect of what we do, and then the in concert just is analogous to the music and the performance arts. So I really love that as being representative of not only everything we do together, but our marriage as well. And I think what we've learned and what Warren was really articulating earlier is that to meet each other or reconnect later in life, and we've been through other marriages before, and honestly, that really brought us to where we are now. So we have to be thankful for those times as well, because I believe that the experiences that we both had individually taught us the techniques and the communication strategies through working through some very difficult times in our lives as well. The reconnection was exciting enough and also really grounded me in ways that I never thought I would be grounded before I met him. And what I've loved about that is that I feel like because of that foundation that we've been able to work through a lot of adversity. I mean, that people may see who we are like on Facebook or any place else, but there's a lot of background, and there always is with anybody, right? Yeah. But what I feel has been so good about the way that we work in concert is that even when we go through the hard times and we are able to communicate through it, that we still know that we're there for each other no matter what. And that's because of the foundation of what we call working in concert, in love, in life, in legacy, and even in our learning.
Yeah, and that is awesome. So you all's interview is my last installment of my Wisdom series where I've been talking to seasoned folks. But since you all are a couple, I do want to focus more on love, if that's okay. You kind of talked about your story before, but how did the two of you all reconnect?
She referenced our professor, Sarah Holroyd, from college. I think at the time, Renee was planning on doing a concert, gathering up as many of her former students as she could to do a concert in her honor. And these are folks that she hadn't seen for 30 or 40 years, some of them, most of them, all of them.
And she was 90 at the time.
She was 90 years old.
Oh, wow.
She had long since retired from UK. She had actually, when she was not too far above our age right now, she left UK and went into nursing. She got an entirely different degree in an entirely different field and worked another, 5, 6, 7 years?
Yeah, she went through a 4-year program with Lexington Community College, which is what we now know as BCTC, excuse me, and then embarked on a career in the ER that went well into her 70s.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
It was pretty wild. And I didn't know a lot of this until after I reconnected with Renee, but I think Sarah was the one that mentioned to Renee that she should reach out to me somehow.
she knew the Lexington students that were here and still living here. And this group of students spanned 3 decades of her teaching career. So it wasn't necessarily people that we went to school with, but it was people, you know, at the time were in 60s, 70s, and 80s at the time. So
Right. Yeah, so she reached out on Facebook, and I didn't know who she was because her last name was different, and I didn't know any Renees, you know. So I didn't really.
we hadn't spoken in 35
At
years.
first, I didn't quite. I don't even know if I responded to her. I think at first.
Probably not.
Yeah,
You left her on red.
But I'm very,
as the
I'm
young
very
people say.
Roseilience on that.
yeah. She doesn't. You know, she doesn't take no for an or no answer as an answer. So anyway, yeah. Finally, we started talking, and I was like, oh, okay, I know. Yeah, I remember you. I know who you are. And I think I quoted back to her like the address where she lived on Regency Road because I had been there and visited, and we'd spent some time together, and you know, we kind of dated briefly in college, and I just happened to remember that. I don't know why, and she was like, oh my God. she kind of freaked out.
I hadn't thought about that address in a long time.
Yeah.
So did you forget that you all had dated?
No, I had remembered, but for him to say 2075 Regency Road, which we'll just go ahead and put it out there, right? We visited up on times when we're driving around. But that was also a place where a lot of musicians lived. It was almost like how they
yeah.
talk about in California, how all, you know, Crosby, Stills, and Nash and all these people live. But it was a really nice, inexpensive place to live, to be a student where you didn't have to live on campus. And because of that, we had a lot of, you know, musical gatherings because of that.
Yeah, but a bunch of our classmates
Yes.
lived there, not just Renee. So yeah. But yeah, we just kind of started talking from there, and I think eventually she was going to come through Lexington to go. She was going to go to some kind of concert.
I was going to the McLean Family Band, was doing a concert, which they're another long part of my history. If I can just interject here, 2015, actually 14 and 15 were a real revolutionary year for me. And during that year, I was contemplating a lot of change that needed to take place in my life. I had a 15-year-old son at the time, and I was in a very challenging marriage, and he was as well. And so I was going through a town, and we decided to reconnect, work on this concert a little bit because, you know, I was at that time connecting with a lot of people, right, in this area. But we just really discovered after, you know, reconnecting that we wanted a life together.
Beautiful.
And I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, she mentioned
This didn't happen overnight.
She mentioned
but-
she was coming to this concert and coming through town, and so we agreed to meet out at the Marriott and have lunch or brunch or something, and sat down, and I think we were watching a UK game.
Another shared love of ours.
And within about probably a half an hour, we realized that we should have spent the last 40 years together.
Oh.
You know.
Yeah. So how did you know that? What was that moment that you knew that this was a love worth trying for a second time around?
You?
Well, I would say it was probably at that moment. And of course, you know, when you realize that, there's a lot of things that you know are in place in your life that's going to be very prohibitive. So we treaded very lightly during that time, and we were very patient. And, you know, we kind of let things work out the way that they would probably have worked out without our involvement at all. And I just really believe at times that you do have a sense of purpose and you have a sense of vision about the way your life is now. And there's a gap between the way it is now and the way that you really want it to be. And when you're in your 50s, there's not a whole lot of time to really impact and make that change, or I guess realize that change. So, like I said, we proceeded with relationship. We both got our divorces before that happened, which, we'd made that decision as well. Yeah. And my son was getting ready to go to the University of Kentucky. I lived in Ohio at the time. I don't know if I mentioned that, but my son was getting ready to go to the University of Kentucky. So I actually got a job here at the University of Kentucky, which basically paved the way for me to move here. Mm-hmm. He went to school here. He lived on campus. I got an apartment here, and we proceeded with our relationship at that time. But it took us 5 years before we actually tied the knot, I guess, officially. And that's a story in itself. So I'll let him pick up on that.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the marriage too, if I may, because your marriage, your proposal and your marriage, your wedding was in the same day, right?
It was in the same minute.
Yeah. Well, we had a mutual friend named Rachel Crow who had a little wedding business, and she does it up in the gorge. It's called My Tiny Wedding. So usually it's Rachel, and at the time her father, who's passed away since, but her father would bring like a little boombox and play music. Rachel's a minister. They might have had a photographer, and the couple that are getting married. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they'll have family and friends, but it's a very intimate thing. You're usually looking out over this gorgeous bluff, this vista in the gorge. If you've ever been up there, I mean, it's just amazing, the views.
And a lot of people, if I just can, this was before COVID, so a lot of people at our time in life were choosing My Tiny Wedding as a great place and a great way to get married, very inexpensively, but very impactfully, with just the people that they want to be at a wedding. So I just thought I'd add that in.
Yeah, well, when you've been married twice, you've had the big
wedding
100 plus, 500 plus people weddings, in big churches and the bands and the whole thing, right? And we were like, we've both done that. We don't need it again, right? This is about us. This is about, our life going forward. So we didn't invite our parents, which they weren't happy about. But, it turned out to be the right thing. The way we did it was, so I told Rachel, I said, look, I want you to send Renee an email and tell her that someone is doing a story on your business, and you need a couple to come pose for wedding pictures as if they're getting married. And I want it to be something she can just pull out of her closet, no big deal, a nice dress, whatever. I'm not going to be in a tux, just a nice, whatever, coat and tie, suit, whatever. And tell her that, pick a date. We worked out the date, and we're just going to go up there and pose for pictures, right? And then when we get up there, we're going to get married, like right then and there. Because by this time, I was pretty convinced she was going to say yes. I didn't really have any fear that she wouldn't. I would have looked pretty stupid if she did.
But it would have only been in front of a few people.
Yeah, right. The whole world wouldn't have known about it. But so I kind of felt pretty confident she was going to say yes, So she sent her the email, and of course Renee was all over that. She was like, "Oh my God, we're going to go pose for pictures up there, and for
Act
Rachel,
like we're married."
Yeah. And so she picked out what she was going to wear, and I picked out, or she helped me pick out whatever I was going to wear, and we went up there, and I think on the way driving up there, she said, "Are you sure we're not going to get married?" And I just looked at her and was like, "Are you kidding? What are you talking about?" She kind of had a little bit of suspicion, but I don't know.
That's a hard thing to ask, too. Yeah. You don't know what the response to that's going to be. So it was...
Yeah. So we get up there, and, I think... I had made the mistake of wearing black pants, and the whole area that you're standing on is gravel, like really dusty gray gravel. So it wasn't really possible for me to get down on one knee because I would have had gravel stain all over my pants, which I couldn't have gotten out, right? So I got down like as far as I could, right, without falling over. And there's a picture of me like half bending over with the ring like this, and the expression on her face is just priceless because she's like, really? Like, we're not.
He said, I have a confession. He said, I've not been honest with you. He said, this is not for a photo shoot. So that's how he positioned it. So we've joked about the 90-Day Fiance series, which I love. He said we were the 90-second fiancés. Because it was like, first I've got to propose, and he gave me the ring, and I didn't have a ring. And he says, well, I just happen to have one here. And so, and Rachel said, we're going to do this. We're going to do it right now. So we did it, and then we went to the courthouse afterwards to get our marriage license because Warren had done some investigation that you could do that within 24 hours of the actual.
Yeah, in Kentucky, you can get married before you actually have a license, which
Who knew?
Some people don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, I know a few couples that have done that.
Yeah. So we were in Powell County, went to the Powell County courthouse, and
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful story. I
Thank
love
you.
that. And I remember watching the proposal video when we were at the Mexican restaurant watching that. So,
well, and I'd already picked out. We didn't really have a big party planned, but the owner, then owner of the Twisted Cork, Whitney Sloan Akey, Adams, had agreed to let us have a party there. So I had all my friends and our friends there.
Everybody kept a great secret.
Waiting for us.
Because I had no idea.
I blindfolded her from our house all the way to the Twisted Cork. She had no idea where she was going. I blindfolded her walking in. They played the wedding march as we walked in.
and everybody came up and sang a song for us, which was a really special night.
Yeah,
he did great.
Yes, it's so beautiful.
Thank you.
And so with this beautiful marriage, I'd imagine that there have been some challenges. So can you talk to us about challenges that you've had working together in such a high-profile creative space?
I can speak to that. And I think we were married in August of 2019, and soon after that, we all know what happened like in February and March of 2020. And I just really reflect on that now because, everybody was kind of isolated. And here we were, just been married for a few months. And now we were going to spend all of this time together. And we had a really great experience with that. However, at the time, I had actually... back in 2019, I had worked for basically the last 5 years, and I'll just back up. I'll just say I worked all of my life for a dream position that I'd always kind of wanted of that nature, and it was to work for a diversity company out of Silver Springs, Maryland. And I'd done some work with them at the University of Kentucky before, but like I said, it was kind of like a progression to get to this point. I had actually taken off 15 years of my career when I was raising my son because it was just needed. I'll just leave it at that. And I don't regret that time. However, it's a very dangerous thing when a woman leaves a very nice career to raise a child and then to expect 15 years later to be able to move right back into, the work environment. So I had actually worked my way to that point again when COVID hit. And this was a company which required a lot of travel across the country to deliver diversity classes to a variety of Fortune 500 companies. And I was just in my dream world for a few months. And we were told, basically about 3 months after COVID, because, initially we thought it was going to be a 2-week type of deal, right? So everybody just stay in for 2 weeks and we could move on. The company had to basically downsize just like a lot of other companies did. And because I was the newest hire, I was the first one to go. So that really was the first step. So losing your career and losing your income, because we do not make any money off of Overtones. We don't make any money off of our music ventures. We never have. So income outside basically finances the rest of everything that we do. So that's been a challenge, and I've really worked hard to get back into that space. But, there's been a lot of other dynamics, that have happened that have moved, the in-person training to the virtual world, which is basically slices the income like in half. And then eventually, a lot of companies aren't doing that anymore either. So I'm in a period now where we're both having to recreate what life looks like for us, being so close to retirement, but also realizing we can't retire yet, but we have got to work in concert, to make that happen. And I will just say that's probably been one of the biggest challenges. Would you?
Yeah, anytime, you're hit financially, that's, that's a tough road to go. And, the fact that we were newlyweds really didn't enter into it. It's just, it's just another part. It's just another dynamic, another part of the relationship that you have to agree on. You have to figure out, okay, what's the path forward? How do we overcome this? Mm-hmm. What are we going to do? How do we pivot? So, that takes finesse,
mm-hmm.
and it takes having an open mind and being willing to compromise. And I don't know that either one of us really had the right answer,
mm-hmm.
other than kind of wait it out and see what happens, have faith. And I think having a strong faith is really
faith over fear
at the
mm-hmm.
core of it all. There's a plan. We don't know what it is, but there's a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to have faith in that. And you have to also kind of have your antenna up for what's out there, what's coming your way, what's, who said this that you can, okay, well, that person might be able to help me, then whatever, a lot of things kind of enter into it. But, yeah.
And I would say the second part of that would be false narratives created around what we do mm-hmm. become very challenging. And only by basically a 0.0001% of the population that we work with in concert in the music world. And I think at times, like some people see something being done and, what we've built together, that there's a tendency to really want to create a narrative around that is not accurate or true. And I will just say it's challenging at times really figuring out the right path to addressing that. So we've chosen the path over when people throw bricks, we build an empire. So we've collected a lot of these, and what I call bricks is just things that are thrown at us over the course of the 10 years that we've been together. And we just continue to be, like you said, resilient and put those bricks together to craft responses to those. And I've had to learn the art of building broad shoulders. I've had to learn the art of developing a tolerance for the word no. And also making really good decisions about who we interact with and who we choose to work in concert with. Yeah. And this is the best decision I've ever made.
Well, that's so beautiful. And I love that. I love that you've also now incorporated PR into your business
Absolutely.
As well. So what is one thing that you all have learned about love now that you didn't know in your younger years?
For me, I think when you know that you're with the person you're supposed to be with, there is an underlying peace that you have that is there kind of no matter what happens, what's thrown at you, what's said, what's done, what comes your way. And the realization that you're incredibly stronger together than you are individually. We're both pretty headstrong people, and pretty one-directional when it comes to our goals and, attaining goals, mission, things like that. But together, there's almost a feeling of invincibility there, You're not going to tell us we can't do this. You're mm-hmm. not going to stand in our way. You're not going to say things about us that are untrue, because the truth will reveal itself just by doing what we're doing over time and being the good people that we are and treating people the way they should be treated, So, and all of that's kind of come true. Everything we have set out to accomplish, we have pretty much accomplished, and then some. Some of the awards that we received, those weren't even goals necessarily. Mm-hmm. It happened because of, the work that we put in, concentrating on putting out a good product, putting people on our show that are, deserving musically, and personally, the kind of just good people that have the right mindset and the right direction, and that are driven, that are focused on moving people with their music. Good music just rises to the top, and so when you put that out there, it takes care of itself. So if the audio quality is great, and the video, if you're videotaping, video quality is great, the mixing is great, and the audience response is great, that's just lightning in a bottle, right? And if you can produce that again and again and again.
Yeah. And I would just add that we are, and we've said this many times, we're ferociously and unapologetically protective of each other. So, there's sometimes a tendency to try to, isolate one or the other of us for someone else's goals. So we've always banded together, and we've stood strong together. I love that about him, because he has my back. I know that at all times, no matter what. And I will say the things that I've learned in this late in life type of relationship is what it means to be truly loved, and what it means to be truly appreciated, and what it means to have patience, and also be willing to work out any type of conflict or discourse, and to know that even at the time you're going through it, everything's okay at the end, because I know he has my back. He knows that I have my back. And the people that try to, sometimes get in the middle and get us into something, that they would feel would cause conflict, it doesn't happen because of that strong foundation that we have.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that. And I didn't know that there were people trying to pit you all against each other.
It happens just on a very isolated basis, but it's almost like swatting flies, but it's gotten more like, whack-a-mole. I would kind of call it that. It's just, and that happens with anybody, no matter what. If you're in a corporate environment, whatever, that happens. But it also comes from an insecurity about where people are at, that they feel like they need security in bringing other people down at times. But we have each other, and I will just add that it is so wonderful to be loved and to be appreciated at this point in our lives, and to know that we've gone through what you don't want in a relationship, to know that that's going to be the foundation for what happens going forward. He has also said, if I might add, that I think we were connected. I was 52 and you were 53, right? That we want to make it a point to spend the rest of whatever life we have at this point. We're not going to have a 50th anniversary. We might. But I'm just saying, whatever point we have left in this life, that we want to do it together, and we want to enjoy life and not be in pain and conflict every single day of your life, and feeling like you're just fighting an uphill battle. Just even trying to get back to work, and to being told that you can't do this. I've said this many times. I said it at the Lifetime Achievement thing, that I moved from Ohio to Kentucky. And that's been a very important transition, to move from no to can.
Yeah, that's so good. And you've both poured into so many people, and also yourselves too. But how do you hope that your story, your love story, inspires others moving forward?
Well, I use the phrase that Lee Iacocca said years ago, that it's not about the big trees you cut down, it's the small seeds you plant along the way. And I would hope that when everybody sees, what is visible, which seems to be awards, recognition, also the body of work that we're doing, that they know that that's not what's important to us. What is important to us is like seeing other people start to achieve those things, not only in their relationships, but in their music career. And we've seen that happen. The most obvious example is the Josie Music Awards. I can't take responsibility for everybody's nomination, but I will tell you, when we were there in 2022, there were about 12 guests that we'd had on our show, and also from Kentucky, that were nominated. Last year, there were 75. So we work with a lot of artists on helping them realize what they need to do to get to that level as well, and to watch 17 Kentucky artists get up on the Opry stage last year to accept awards. That means more to us than us getting up there to accept an award. And that is the biggest thing I look forward to at these award shows, is seeing somebody that we've worked with or we've had a small part in their life and in their career to be able to do that as well.
Yeah.
I think for me, especially when I was younger, I always wanted to own a venue. I thought, there needs to be a venue around here where people can get up on a stool with a mic and sing and play their original music, right? Well, over the years, more and more of those have sprung up, right? So that's not an uncommon thing anymore. There used to be coffee houses. Now it's bars and restaurants and places you go out to eat where you can see that, right?
VFWs.
But I still kind of liken what we do, and I feel sort of at the core, Overtones Live is sort of our own little venue. It's like our own little safe space where people can come and share their music. The difference is, we're heard all across the state, right? We're heard a little bit down in Tennessee, a little bit up in Indiana, and all across Kentucky. That's far more reaching than my little venue idea, right? Of having a little local place in Lexington where people can play. So the impact is much greater. And if the person who is in the spotlight on our show chooses to capitalize on that and do a little bit of work on their own in terms of marketing and, pushing or promoting that event, it can carry much farther than just, I don't know, we're on the air, 4 or 5 times the show. If you send a show out, it's on multiple stations.
Oh, yeah, it's on 16 hours. So there's like 16 hours of marketing combined, 16 to 20 hours marketing combined of on-air time that's given to an artist that's on our show. Yeah. And if anybody wants to do the math on what it costs to be on the radio, on commercial radio for 1 hour, they can see the value of that.
Yeah, so that's a wave that they can ride probably for the next 6 months to a year.
Yes.
If they know what they're doing. If they choose to do that.
They can take the video that we make and totally use it with their own marketing purposes. And so what we feel like we do, we are planting those small seeds. And however an artist chooses to utilize that is totally up to them, right? But we take a lot of pride in knowing that we had a small part in that role. We've had some people on Overtones show up on American Idol, on The Voice. We had a participant that lived here in Lexington that moved to Denmark, and he was on Denmark's X Factor, became a finalist. And to know that he's singing that one song that we saw him sing on our open mic about 5 years earlier at the Twisted Cork, and now he's on all over the place. So, those are the things that we really get a lot of joy out of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I go back to this every now and then when I'm in these kind of interview situations. But the open mic network that we started, that really started it all. Being able to take somebody who sits in their bedroom and writes music, plays guitar maybe, or some other instrument, that really doesn't. They don't have an opportunity to play in front of other people. Like they may not go to church, they may not have a network of friends that they can perform in front of, So
they may not have a supportive family.
Yeah,
that's another dynamic.
They come to an open mic. They drive to Lexington or wherever to get on an open mic stage. And this light bulb goes off, right? This epiphany happens where they go, oh my gosh, people applauded. The people liked my song. Maybe I can do this, right? And they go back and they work harder and they write more songs and they practice and they get better. 2 or 3 years later, they're touring all over Kentucky, right? They're fronting a band. They're the lead singer of a band that is now a known entity, whereas before they were just in their room, right? And I was that kid. At like 14, 15, 16, I was listening to James Taylor and Kenny Loggins and all these people that I admired on the radio, playing, learning their songs, learning their lyrics, not really thinking about writing. And I was going to do that myself in a band setting. I wasn't thinking about being a solo artist, right, or having that kind of career. But everything I was doing was kind of working towards that anyway, So I always remember that time, when I was like, man, I wish I could do this in front of people, because I didn't have a way to do that,
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I think we're most proud of is we've taken that model and we've been able to transition it to radio, where the reach is so much greater, and the recognition for that artist is so much greater.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And so we're going to finish up this segment, and then we're going to go into like a lightning round for our next one. But finish this sentence. Our love story is, and Renee, you can start.
Well, I'm going to say resilient, and I'm not saying that just because your name is Roseilience, but resilient has always been my word, and I've kind of laughed at the fact, and just cherished the fact that I said you can't have Renee without resilient because all of my letters are in that word.
I love
But
that. Yeah.
I will just say it's resilient. We've often called ourselves Teflon, and at times that Teflon phase takes a little bit longer than others, but our love is resilient. What's your
Beautiful.
answer?
My second half of that sentence would have to be our love is a gift from God.
Yeah.
I think it was truly heaven sent. I think he's had his hand all over our lives, our marriage, our careers, the path we've been on, the hurdles we've overcome, the opportunities that have come our way. I think having faith in him and his love and his forgiveness and all of that has just sort of marked our way.
Amen. Thank you for sharing.
Amen.
That. So we are going to transition to Rose, Thorn, Bud, which is a technique that helps people reflect on highs, lows, and what's budding on their journey. Rose is a recent success or achievement that you're most proud of. Thorn, a challenge that you faced. And Bud, an idea, project, or opportunity that you all have blossoming. So let's start with Rose. What is a recent success or achievement you're most proud of, Renee?
May I phone a friend, please?
Yes. Yes.
A recent success, I will just say, is going through the last year with not having steady income. And I know that doesn't sound like a success, but just being able to be alone with God and to pray about that, and also have a supportive husband that we work in concert to. We are a 1099 Army. We're contract to contract, but just being able to have faith in God. And I will just say that that's a big success. He would probably agree that that's not always been present in my life. I'm a OCD. I have a lot of anxiety. And yet a success is being able to put that anxiety aside and just saying, God's got this, and we're going to get through this.
Yeah, thank you. Warren?
I'm going to go, I guess, back down the award show trail and just say that I think the international awards that Renee has been awarded, women's awards, are one of the things I'm most proud of, because I don't think she ever really set out to, on that path to win an award. But those awards are, like she's in a group of women with like Michelle Obama. These people that are winning these awards are known in people's minds all over the world, right? And here's little Renee in Lexington, Kentucky, in this category with all these people who are 40, 50, 60-year career people that are just known entities, right? And their process of judging someone on their merit is second to none. And they send you feedback. Like they give you this whole list of things that they love about what you're doing and the things that maybe you can improve on or think about going forward. Here's something that, we think you should focus on for 2026 or whatever it is, right? That's really crazy. It's invaluable and it's so cool, so I'm really proud of her for that. To me, that stuff, I don't care about winning some men's award, international, whatever. It's great, but I think for her, it really has kind of opened up her mind as far as what the potential of this is and what the possibilities are. And I think it's given her sort of some confirmation that maybe writing a book is a worthwhile thing, and that maybe people would benefit from that. I know they'd benefit from it, but she has to know that, right? And I think some of these awards have kind of reinforced that idea, because everything she's done up to this point and everything we're doing now is contributing to what these people are seeing as a body of work that is valuable, so much so that you're given an award. Where was it last time?
It was in Istanbul.
Istanbul. Like the award ceremony, they're flying people from all over the world to come to Istanbul. We couldn't go, at that particular time.
But we got to watch it on TV.
We got to watch it, and she got the award in the mail, that they gave her. And it's just so cool. Yeah. So these kind of things, the Lexis are cool, and the Josies are cool, and the, some of that CMA stuff is cool. But when you're in a group of women that are recognized internationally by women, right? That's a whole different thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Thank you for sharing that. So quickly, if we can do Thorn, maybe just like one word answer. So what's a challenge that you all have gone through?
A thorn, a challenge. I would just say the biggest challenge is staying true to your mission statement and your goals that you set out to each other, and also recognizing that God is in control and you need to basically keep Him at the center, and then everything else kind of stems out from that.
Okay. And then, Warren, if you want to talk about Bud, what's something that you all have coming up?
Bud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coming out?
Yeah. We could talk about the book.
Yeah.
We want to do this together.
Yeah, she's wanting me to help her on this book. I really think she's got it. I mean, it's her life story. It's her experience. It's her work experience. It's her, I'm a part of the post-2015 experience and a little bit during college, but the rest of it is her, right? And
And it's called Working in Concert, Orchestrating a Life of Alignment, Purpose, and Inner Peace. And it'll have 3 chapters talking about playing it by ear. I've always said I'm deaf on one side, so I only have one ear to play it by. But it's about playing life by ear, playing with purpose, and playing with meaning.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you all so much for being guests on Roseilience. I really appreciate it. In the latter half of the year, I want you all to come back. And so hopefully by then that book is written, or at least in a
Well, that gives me a good
place.
challenge.
Yes. So would you all be interested in coming back?
Absolutely.
of course.
Thank you so much. And I truly appreciate your vulnerability, your insight, and just the love story. So it's giving people like me hope that
There's always hope.
that I'll be in a beautiful and harmonious relationship like you all. Listeners, thank you again for tuning in to Roseilience, from struggle to strength, from obstacle to opportunity. Real stories, real struggles, real growth. Just like the rose that grew from concrete. Keep the Roseilience. Thank you, Renee and Warren.
Thank you.
Thank you.